So in this talk, I'm going to try to show how a socially informed linguistics can help us to understand what went on a little bit better than we would have done otherwise. This, of course, is not the place I would have started from. I wouldn't have started from the riots, but actually the riots provide a useful springboard, a powerful springboard, I would say. Language in London has been a political issue for a long time now, so things like funding for support in the schools, English, okay? That is sort of fairly laissez-faire these days, I think. In any one borough of London, there are at least 100 different languages spoken. And across the capital schools, there are about 300 languages. So a very highly multilingual place. But now, suddenly, language has become a part of the public discourse about the riots. On Newsnight, on the 13th of August, the historian, David Starkey, said the following as part of his analysis of the riots in London. The whites have become black. A particular sort of violent, destructive, nihilistic gangster culture has become the fashion. And black and white, boy and girl, operate in this language together, this language which is wholly false, which is this Jamaican patois that has been intruded in England. And that's why so many of us have this sense of literally a foreign country. Starkey was, not surprisingly, widely criticized by commentators of all sorts, and people saw racism in these comments here. He also seems to be linking Jamaican Creole directly with bad behavior. Linking language and behavior isn't a new thing, and actually it's not so much ethnicity as social class that's important here. It's well known that the working class accents of our country hold a certain stigma, not for the speakers perhaps, but for outsiders and potential employers perhaps as well. So many people think it's all right to lampoon, heard that word again, lampoon Cockneys, Brummies, Scousers, Glaswegians, and to call Bristolians country bumpkins. This is sort of okay. And in fact, that in our show, that was one of the things they actually did. They made fun of country dialects. It's sort of okay to do that. Now, it's probably also observationally true that if we go to a prison, that we'll actually hear a higher proportion of urban accents spoken in prison than among the population at large. So this leads to a false logical conclusion that actually speaking an urban dialect is potentially part of criminality. Okay? Now, I don't think that anyone in this room would really subscribe to a view like that. But it's something that it's a trap Starkey falls directly into by talking about Jamaican. Okay. Anyway, at least our rational selves wouldn't actually fall into that trap. But attitudes to language are tenacious things. They run deep and they're subconscious, very difficult to dislodge. So, how can a linguist redress the balance and provide evidence that supports a different view? What I'm going to say isn't simply my instinctive reaction against a controversial position expressed on a television program. It's the fruit of research on the language of London's inner city, adolescents, carried out by colleagues at Queen Mary, University of London, which is just down the road from here. These are the two projects supported by the Economic and Social Research Council, and over a time span of some 6 years or so. Okay, why did we do this? Well, one of the things we're interested in was this idea of estuary English, which is something some of you have probably heard of. So, just to give examples of some estuary English vowels, a phrase like, I'm going home, all right? Estuarians might say, I'm going home, with what we call a front vowel, okay, in dialectology, phonetics. Another pronunciation that we often find in the southeast of England is a word like food. Okay, I say food, but many people around here say food. Okay, it sounds a little bit French almost. good food then would be an estuary English pronunciation. We were interested in knowing, does this actually come from London? Okay, dialectology tells us that innovations start in cities. Did it spread from here out to the home counties where we heard these pronunciations? What was it that we actually found once we'd done these recordings then, with people from, young people from Hackney and Haringey, and also from Havering in the outer city? So, here are some words, and I'm now going to attempt to pronounce these in estuary English stroke Cockney, and then I'm also going to attempt to say them in the kind of accent that we heard. Okay, so let's take the first one first of all. He come 3 days late. He come 3 days late. Okay, the second one. She lives in the house on the hill. She lives in the house on the hill. He thinks he's always right. He thinks it's always right. Her mum likes to cook good food. Her mum likes to cook good food. I don't want to go home. I don't want to go home. Okay, the main differences there are in the vowel sounds, but you might also notice that I dropped my H's to start with, and then when I did the sort of modern version of that, I didn't drop my H's. Young Londoners don't drop their H's anymore. That amazes me, but they don't. So they speak good English in that respect, in spite of what Professor Starkey says. Young Londoners also use things, okay, here's some surprising things, all right. They use man in a way that reminds us of German, actually. I don't really mind how my girl looks. If she looks decent, yeah, I don't really care. It's a personality man's looking at. Okay, we have a few examples like that, which I think would really surprise you. Something else we find, I just looked at the money. I was like, you just gave me £1,000, mate, here you are. I was like, for I said, many people in this room say that regularly. But what we also found was, in London, this is them. What area are you from? What part? This is me. I'm from East London. Okay, that is a new, what we call a quotative. Okay, that seems to be, it's still there in the background there, but it's something that we hear quite a lot of these days. Right, where do these things come from? Are they Jamaican, as Starkey would have us believe? No, they are not. What about the slang words? Okay, well, we have some good candidates for Jamaican here. These are Jamaican, all right? Bear, blood, ute, mandem. But young Londoners talk about ma'ens, okay, where they live. That is not Jamaican, as far as I know. I've been told that it isn't, that it's homegrown English. So, where do these vowel sounds come from that I mentioned? Well, okay, I mentioned the expression go home, something, an O-type vowel instead of an O-type vowel. Could be Jamaican, and a word like face would pronounce face. That could possibly be Jamaican, but Jamaicans actually tend to say fierce and instead of the vowels I've just been using. But they could well be West African, they could be Bangladeshi, they could be anybody who's learning English as a second language from anywhere in the world, really. This a pronunciation of food, for food, well, that's homegrown English. That's a south of England change that's been happening in the last 30 years or so. We're not alone in talking about this new London voice as a mixed, multi-ethnic dialect. Catherine Birbal-Singh, who's a well-known blogger for The Telegraph, says the following, and this contrasts this with what Starkey says. She writes, has David Starkey ever been to Jamaica? My mother's Jamaican, and I can assure you that she sounds nothing like our out-of-control kids. For one, the accent Starkey's talking about is specific to London. Two, that accent is uniquely English. It's a kind of fusion of many cultures, including Cockney East End speech. Okay. Now, one thing that Birbal-Singh is right about, and that Starkey is probably right about, is that it does sound black. Why does it actually sound black? It doesn't necessarily to people in the East End of London, but it sounds black to other people. Let's look at a bit of history now. London's been a target of immigration for 5 centuries, more than that. Okay. Now, it appears that apart from a few Yiddish words like nosh, kosher, glitch, there isn't really very much from other languages in the English of London. That has changed. What is it that's changed now in the last 25 years, something like that? Something to do with the Empire Windrush, which we saw a picture of earlier. The people from the Caribbean were the first post-war migrants, first group of people who came in relatively large numbers. Post-war, we also have the growth of music. Something called separate youth culture is something that's post-Second World War. It probably started in America. So those people sort of were the founders, if you like. And so it's probably no surprise, in fact, that even though the West Indians, the Caribbeans, are not the largest ethnic minority anymore, their music certainly sets the tone. It sets a tone linguistically as well, we think. Now, how can this be? Okay, right, a couple of factors here. Immigration, okay? What this shows us is that in Hackney, which is, I believe, are we in Hackney here? I'm not even sure. Okay, roughly half, just less than half the population can be classified as white British, but in outer London, Havering, it's much greater. High concentration. And secondly, the blue areas here are so-called European Union Objective 2 areas, which means they have been in receipt of extra funding. So, one of the issues then, so what's happened then? Why do I argue that these two factors, high concentration and lack of income, lead to the creation of a new way of speaking? Well, it has to do with the communities which have grown up in this part of London, okay? They don't have the amount of, they don't have the disposable wealth, if you like, to take part or to really sort of circulate all that much. So we have communities here which are multilingual, self-reliant, family-based, using ethnicity ties as well. So, okay, so that's the reason why we have this. And the fact that it was the Caribbeans who came here first probably has something to do with the fact that it's perceived as, that this new way of speaking is perceived as black. Right, now, what do young people say about this? Where does this leave the East End, Eastenders? Cockney, the Cockney dialect, okay. Where has it gone? Are these young people who are growing up here, are they in fact Cockneys? This is what a few of them said on the matter. And this, come on, move. Someone's helping me, thank you. Right, this is an extract from one of the interviews. Okay, so the interviewer says, what about Cockneys? Do you think you're Cockneys? No, I hate them. Isn't that Essex sides or not? Hackney's not really Cockney. Okay, so you hate Cockneys. How would you describe a Cockney then? White, chavs, that's one word. I hate them. Are there any in this area? There's loads, innit? Loads. There's black Cockney people as well. Oh? There's black Cockney people as well, though. Where'd the Cockney people come from? Eastenders. I thought it was Essex. Bethnal Green, Borough, and places like that. Yeah. Okay. So that they are quite clear. One is black, one is white out of these two boys. They're clear they're not Cockneys. Okay. So what about this? This is another. What about the programme EastEnders? Sue, the interviewer, asks, what about the programme EastEnders? It's a bunch of bull to me. It's boring. Do the people around here speak like that, do you think? Some people, but that's what I say, they try and copy it and try and be like EastEnders. Who talks like the people in EastEnders around here? Well, the people that want to be Cockney. Well, what's that? Mainly older people or younger people? More older, like in between teens and adulthood would do it. Teens more than, nowadays they want to talk slang, more than Cockney. When you're getting older, you look back and you think, oh, I don't want to talk slang, so they try and be Cockney. Okay, so this rather complicated argument here, it's got to do with the idea that Cockney is spoken by slightly older people. Incidentally, Raymond is black, but he sees the possibility of becoming Cockney as he grows older. Okay. It's interesting. They are not Cockneys, these people themselves. Okay, so what are they then? Let's look at the next quote, and this is my final quote. They're asked to read a word list. Okay, so Mark reads the word list. And then it's Tina's turn. All right then, all of these words, as naturally as you can. Tina then addresses Mark. Do you know, you actually sounded Cockney when you were saying the first words, Mark, and then you went into this deeper voice. Is it? Yeah, all right, ready. And then she starts reading in a mock Cockney voice. And Mark says, no, that's not really her normal way of speaking. And Tina laughs, all right. And then she continues in a mock received pronunciation voice. Neither is that. You've got to say it normal. And then she continues in a mock RP voice. There's no point in doing it if you're not doing it right. Okay. And then in the end, she's persuaded to read it in her normal voice. Her normal voice and his normal voice is what we call multicultural London English. Okay. MLE, Multicultural London English. Jaffakan is another word that you've probably heard for this. Right, so, to close then, David Starkey's objections was that what he perceives as Jamaican patois is put on and false. Well, he said it's something that had been intruded into England. Well, he's wrong on every count. For a start, it's not Jamaican patois, we're quite clear about that. It's not put on. It's homegrown, it's not intruded or foreign. So what I would say then about the vernacular English of London is that it forms part of young people's identities. It reflects the melting pot of the East End, and you can see that from the different words that occur, different pronunciations and so on. This is a situation in which young people are actually learning English in this part of the city. It cuts across ethnicity and race, and people, the way they're talking shows us that in fact they feel that this way of speaking is theirs. They don't really have a name for it. Slang is the word they use. But it's not the case that all ethnicities speak this in the same way. As long as race is important in the world, there are ways of speaking multicultural London English which they vary slightly across the different ethnicities. That said, these people believe that this is very much their language. Thank you.